Tonight on Not News. It's National Housing Day, and if you're not in the top 10% of earners, you can't afford the average home in Canadian cities. We've all seen the graphs of the average Canadian house price flying up to $650,000, while the average income sits at about $65,000. Throw in some inflation, interest rate hikes, and you won't be able to afford a down payment unless you sell Taylor Swift tickets. I'm still on the wait list. But don't worry, I did some research, and the solution is simple. Ask your MLA today if they understood what any of that meant. You know, there's a problem when the headlines read, "Rental crisis is so bad prisoners are asking to extend their sentences. 10 reasons millennials should say goodbye to Canada. For the sake of their financial future, young people should leave Vancouver and Toronto. Millennials are fleeing Canada's big cities." I'm actually excited to see all the big city CEOs try to get a coffee or a cocktail when everybody I know moves to a commune and starts farming. Mortgages are so expensive most can't afford to get one, and some can't afford to keep them. Unless you got a fixed payment mortgage, now known as an infinity mortgage, which means you will die before paying it off. Now there are 3 things guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and defaults. Well, what's causing it? Foreign students, immigration, they're suffering from the same problems we are, if not worse. Hey, come on into Canada. Where am I gonna live? Oh, don't worry, we've got a great church basement. You're gonna love it. They've got Princess Bride on VHS. Immigration solves a different pending crisis: population dependency. As the working population gets older and retires, we have to support them. But since they greatly outnumber us, social systems, healthcare, long-term care, public pensions, and tax revenues collapse. As much as I would enjoy watching retirees move into the long-term care they voted to gut, they're not. The older generations are remaining in large, empty nest family homes. But it's not their fault. Selling their homes would trigger a massive capital gains tax. While significantly reducing their available credit, they're likely going to need, since their RSPs, pensions, and savings are becoming less valuable with the rising cost of living. Population growth is necessary to maintain the tax base, so we either need immigration or to get those incels laid. We could also ban birth control, but no country would do that, right? Canada's population keeps growing while our production of houses keeps going down. There is very limited affordable housing. In the 1950s, affordable was considered a day's work in a week, 20% of income, but is now defined as 30% of pre-tax income. Over 40% of Canadians pay more than that, and the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation doesn't use that definition. The housing market is exactly that, a market. And for the last 20 years, the private sector has been in charge of creating and maintaining that market, downloading the cost to consumers while the government makes massive profits from taxation. Rental buildings are considered an investment, which means they're intended to generate revenue, be them individuals, companies, pension funds, or real estate investment trusts. REITSs? I don't think they exist. This all generates private equity, but if we want to make things affordable, we can't rely on the private sector, because as Michael Brooks, the CEO of RealPAC, who represents the largest real estate holders in Canada, said, affordable, deeply affordable housing is a public good, and the private sector is not primarily in the business of providing the public good. Now that's capitalism in a sentence. Public good is the government's responsibility, which makes affordable housing the government's responsibility. Trudeau campaigned on it, and then said it wasn't their responsibility. I mean, he is really taking the Pontius Pilate approach to governing. I wash my hands of this government's sins. What? We all know he likes to dress up. Just one thing, Mr. Prime Minister. Real estate makes up 10% of the national GDP, the highest in the OECD nations, if you ignore New Zealand, and it exceeds business investment in Canada. While the federal government is the greatest profiteer. For every new build in Ontario, the federal government takes 39 cents on the dollar of tax revenue, yet only reinvests 7 cents of that, leaving them 31% profits. If I had that kind of ROI, I'd be able to buy a house. They make 9.7 times that of the province, 6.9 times that of the municipality, and 2 times that of the developers. So it kind of feels like it's your responsibility. The province contributes 57% of funding while getting 32% back. The municipality's 36% while getting 29% back. I dropped out of my economics courses, but this math isn't mathing. After the Second World War, the federal government created 1 million low-cost victory homes. They had it so streamlined it only took 36 hours to build. Now it takes 3 years just for the companies to get the permits, and they won't break ground on construction until it's 80% pre-sold. But by that time, the costs have gone up so much, they have to cancel future projects in order to save the ones they're doing now. Simply put, you apply to build 100 houses. It takes 3 years. In 3 years, the price goes up 25%. Now you can only build 75 with that budget, or build all 100 by raising the price. Why does it take so long to get building? Good old-fashioned bureaucracy. Municipal governments are responsible for construction and housing permits. The province is responsible for zoning, transit, and infrastructure. The federal government has all the money, and none of them get along. Canada needs 5.8 million houses by 2030 to achieve affordability. Currently, we have the highest house prices, the lowest houses per capita, while having the most land and the lowest population density in the G7 nations. How do we fix it? There are a lot of solutions, like densification, which happens when you become an elected official. Massive increases to the empty house tax, which is self-reporting. Oh yeah, I live here. Capping immigration, but we need them to build the houses. Capping foreign students, but they're a lucrative asset. Create purpose-built affordable housing, just not in my backyard. Progressive surtaxes on second homes, but not my cottage, or third or fourth home, but not the boat. Eliminate above guidance rental increases. Then your landlord won't do those upgrades and repairs you need, even though it's their property, their investment, and their property value. Rebate rent over 30% of income. That doesn't solve any problem. Reduce capital gains and land transfer taxes. Then where do you go? Remove restrictive zoning, but not too much. That's how you lose the green belt. I have an idea. We create a building cooperative with religious status that doesn't pay taxes in exchange for building houses for our members. A cult. That's a cult. Actually, I do have one idea that I'd like to see disproved. Eliminate capital gains and land transfer taxes on primary residences within a particular value to immediate family. Much like the spousal rollover. Mom, Dad, I'm moving back in, but I'm taking the house. It does solve multiple problems. Housing, long-term care, cost of living, home care and child care needs, and keeps the homes in the family. At this point, any plan's better than no plan. We've got to get some leaders who actually want to do something rather than talk about something. It's called political will. Because by the time we finish all the audits and studies and reports, the budget for building could be massively less effective. At what point does all the time and money we spend on reports cost more than solving the actual problem? Urgency is needed in streamlining the process, removing red tape, inflicting regulations, and confusing building codes. Creating a pre-approved structures list, which includes prefabricated structures, and digitizing the permitting process would go a long way. But who can organize all that? There's agreement across the board that a multi-sector, multi-government national housing strategy is required. And that strategy should be headed by the federal government. After all, they make the most money. They hold the most power, they have leverage across all sectors with improved access to land and favorable loans. They control financial transfers to provinces and municipalities, and can withhold that funding unless conditions are met, and offer bonuses. Baliev has voiced this opinion, but before you go praising him, understand it undermines provincial and municipal autonomy, and notwithstanding is a punitive tactic, like no dessert until you're done your dinner. No healthcare funding for you until you build that house. Good province, good city. He's also advocating for the use what we've got idea, converting underused industrial and office space into residential, specifically the CBC's office. But it's not all bad. With everyone selling feet pics at home, office space is less in demand. You want to work from home, do you? Well, now the office is your home. We need our government to stop acting like a private corporation and posting massive profits off of a public good, and prioritize appropriate reinvestment, massively reducing process times. Otherwise, we'll all go to Tulum, start a cult, and work remotely doing data entry for Stats Canada. Although an entire generation leaving should help free up the housing. So if you want to enjoy a Timmy's, a cocktail, or dine in a restaurant, I suggest we stop talking and start building. And if you want to know what's not news, I'll be right here. Oh, that was so long, no one's gonna watch that.